Hey guys, got another teamwork build for you. It's time for the Brains and Brawn Psychic. Let's get started. So first, let's talk about Ancestry. And I'm going to go with the only Ancestry from Impossible Lands I haven't used, and that is the Kashrishi. You know, the Psychic Rhino. And for our heritage, we're going to go with the Nascent Kashrishi. So we get an extra first level Kashrishi feat. And the one we're going to pick is Emotional Partitions. So we get a +1 circumstance bonus on saving throws against emotion effects. And if we roll a success on a saving throw against an emotion effect, we get a critical success instead. This is to help us avoid that frightened condition, which hurts all builds, but especially this one. And of course, we are building a psychic, so we gotta pick our subconscious mind. This makes intelligence our main stat. We can also use one action to gain a +2 bonus to our AC and reflex saves until the beginning of our next turn, thanks to Calculate Threats. For our conscious mind, we're going with the Silent Whisper. Not only does this give us the great amp for message, but it's the only one that really fits what we're trying to do in this build. So that's why we're taking this. For the background, you can go with anything as long as you get the right stats. I went with Martial Disciple for athletics, so we're automatically trained in that. After all, we are going to need athletics for some other things that we need to do in this build. The starting stats for this build should be Strength 16, Dexterity 14, Constitution 10, Intelligence 18, Wisdom 10, and Charisma 10. Of course, at first level, all we get is our Ancestry feat. And the one we're going to take is Open Mind. This will give us an occult cantrip as an innate spell at will. You can pretty much pick any cantrip here you want, but I went with Forbidding Ward. This will allow us to give a +1 bonus to AC and saving throws to an ally against one specific enemy. It's a fantastic spell for boss fights. At level 2, you want to take Cantrip Expansion. As a psychic, cantrips are our main thing, which means we need as many of those as we can get. So getting 2 extra of them is going to be great. Then of course, for the free archetype, we'll be taking the Monk Dedication. This is the brawn side of Brains and Brawn. So we become trained in unarmed attacks and gain the powerful 5th class feature, increasing their damage to 1d6. In addition, you become trained in either athletics or acrobatics. Since we're already trained in athletics from our background, we're going to pick acrobatics here. We also become trained in monk class DC. But that last part really doesn't matter because we're not going to be taking anything that goes off monk class DC. Moving on to level 3 and the general feats. The general feats you want to take for this build are Toughness, Die Hard, Canny Acumen for your reflex saves, Fleet, and Incredible Initiative. Then, for level 4, we'll want to take Psi Strikes. Once per turn, as a free action, if your last action was to cast a spell or unleash your psyche, the residual energy from your spell or unleashing your psyche causes your strikes to do more damage. If your last action was to cast a spell, then your attacks deal 1d6 extra force damage until the end of the current turn. If your last action was to unleash your psyche, this lasts until your psyche subsides. This does also have the Mind Shift trait, meaning you can switch the damage that this feat deals to mental damage. Then on the free archetype side, we'll be taking the stance that we're going to be using for this build. And that of course is Gorilla Stance. While in this stance, the only strikes we can make are Gorilla Slam strikes. These deal 1d8 bludgeoning damage and have the Backswing, Forceful, Grapple, Unarmed, and Non-Lethal traits. Although, since we're part monk, we can make these strikes lethal. Also, while we're in Gorilla Stance, we gain a +2 circumstance bonus to athletics checks to climb. And if we get a success on a check to climb, we get a critical success instead. Again, that last part doesn't matter. What we're after with this feat is that 1d8 bludgeoning damage on our strikes. This will combine extremely well with our Psi Strikes feat as well. And the grapple trait doesn't hurt either. Okay, for our first 3 sets of ability score increases at level 5, 10, and 15, we'll want to increase our strength, dex, intelligence, and charisma. The main reason for charisma is that our innate spells go off charisma, but it's also so that we can intimidate people if we need to. And at level 20, we'll want to increase our dexterity, constitution, intelligence, and charisma. And then our ancestry feat for level 5 is going to be Well of Potential. So for one action once per day, we can just get back one of our focus points, up to our usual maximum. Because focus points are a huge aspect of the psychic class. Thus, being able to get one back once per day, even during combat, is huge. Okay, for level 6, we're going to start with Violent Unleash. So when we unleash our psyche, we can spend a free action to deal 2d6 force damage to all creatures in a 20-foot emanation. Unfortunately, after using this, we become stunned 1. At 5th level and every 2 levels after, the damage increases by 1d6. This is for those situations when the party sends you in first, and there's nobody within 20 feet of you other than enemies. Next on the free archetype side, we'll pick up Monk Resiliency for a few extra hit points. Then at level 8, it's time for Thought Sense. We gain Thought Sense as a vague sense out to a range of 30 feet. Like all other vague senses, it's only about as precise as a human sense of smell, meaning you can predict whether a creature is present, but that's about it. And of course, if they don't think or are immune to mental effects, this doesn't work. If your psyche is unleashed, then this becomes an imprecise sense, allowing you to use it to seek out creatures. Then it's time for the Key Rush feat. For a focus point and an action, we can move twice, whether that's 2 strides, 2 steps, or a stride and a step in either order. We also become concealed during that movement and until the start of our next turn. This allows us to move pretty quickly, which will help us get in and out of combat really easily, especially with a feat we're going to take later on. For our ancestry feat at level 9, we're going to take Unlock Secret. This will give us a first level spell from the occult list as a once per day innate spell. But the spell I recommend you take for this build at this point is Phantom Pain. This allows us to do mental damage and possibly sicken the targets. Before we get into the first teamwork report, let's talk about level 10. First up is Monk's Flurry. This gives us the Flurry of Blows action, allowing us to attack twice for 1 action. This means we can attack twice and cast a spell in the same turn. And on the free archetype side, we'll take Flurry of Maneuvers. This allows us to replace one or both of our attacks from Flurry of Blows with grapples, shoves, or trips. Alright, for today's first teamwork report, we'll start with the strategy for this build. For starters, you're pretty much always going to want to be in Gorilla Stance. Not only because you get a D8 instead of a D6 for your unarmed strikes, but to get that nice item bonus to grapple checks. You're also going to want to unleash your psyche as quickly as possible too. Not only for the extra d6 of damage, but also because we are going to have psyche actions in this build. And unleashing your psyche allows you to use those. You're going to want to use that Key Rush spell to get in and out of combat quickly. Then you're going to want to either trip or grapple the enemy, depending on which save of theirs is highest. And we are intelligence based, which means we can use some recall knowledge skills to find that out, which will not only help us, but help everyone else too. And if we pick up the Unified Theory skill feat at 15th level, then we can use intelligence for all of our recall knowledge checks, which is amazing. At level 12, it's time to take Psi Catastrophe. For 2 actions, we can make all creatures in a 20-foot emanation make a basic reflex saving throw against 1d6 damage per psychic level. That's 12d6 damage right now. It is bludgeoning damage, but we can change it to mental damage and make it a will save. Yes, I know we already have Violent Unleash. However, that's for when we unleash our psyche. This is for when our psyche is about to subside anyway and there's no allies around. because Unleashed Psyche only lasts for 2 rounds, or until we fall unconscious. On the free archetype side of this level, we're going to take Gorilla Pound. If we're in Gorilla stance, for 1 action, we can attempt to demoralize a target and make a Gorilla Slam attack. If the strike hits, then it deals extra damage equal to 3 times the target's frightened value. The damage really doesn't matter here. What matters is getting to attack and demoralize the opponent for 1 action. Great action economy. For our Ancestry feat at level 13, I went with Transcendent Realization. Again, what spell you pick here is going to depend on your party, but a good one I can recommend is Agonizing Despair. For 2 actions, you can make a creature within 60 feet make a will saving throw. This spell deals 46 mental damage and can make the foe frightened. On a successful saving throw, the target takes half damage and is frightened 1. On a failure, the target takes full damage and is frightened 2. And on a critical failure, the target takes double damage and is frightened 3. At level 14, with Conscious Spell Specialization, we gain an extra spell slot of 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th levels. However, we can only use these spell slots to cast spells from our conscious mind. So, Mind Link, Touch of Idiocy, Heroism, etc. Bottom line, these spell slots are limited, but at least we get extra spell slots from this. Then we will want to pick up Perfection's Path for our Fortitude saving throws. As a Psychic, we're going to get Master and even Legendary in Will saves. We're also going to get Master in Reflex saves thanks to Canning Acumen, but we won't get Master in Fortitude saves without this feat. So with this feat, we'll be a Master in 2 saving throws and Legendary in the 3rd by level 17. And that's the same saving throw setup we would get if our main class was Monk, which is pretty awesome. Alright, time for the home stretch. At level 16, we're going to take Wandering Thoughts. As a free action, when our Psyche is unleashed and we cast a spell, we can teleport up to 15 feet to any square we can see. This effectively means that if we take down an enemy with our spell, then we can teleport to the next enemy and be in melee combat with them. Or we can cast a spell on an enemy and then teleport to them and then attack them with Flurry of Blows. There's a lot of things we can do with this, some of which I will talk about in the second teamwork reports. Then at this level, it's also time for Mixed Maneuver. For 2 actions, we can choose any 2 of Grapple, Shoves, or Trips. Attempt both attacks against the same or different creatures, but don't increase your multiple attack penalty until you've made both attacks. In other words, now for 2 actions and no multiple attack penalty, we can grapple and trip an opponent, shove and trip an opponent, or shove and grapple an opponent. While tripping and grappling an opponent won't make them flat-footed twice, what it will do is make them waste actions, 2 of them in fact. At level 17, it's time for our last Ancestry feat. And we're going to go with Cleansing Light. Once per day, for 2 actions, we can create a burst of light from our horn. Doing so means us and all of our allies within 20 feet gain the effects of a 4th level restoration spell. In addition, all enemies in the area are dazzled until the end of our next turn. We'll talk more about this in the teamwork reports. At level 18, it's time to take Deepest Wellspring. Every Psychic should take this, because amping cantrips is the Psychic's main thing. So being able to get your focus points back quickly is very important. So now we get 3 focus points back whenever we refocus instead of just 2. Then of course we need our free archetype feat, and we're going to take Monk Moves. So our speed increases by 10 feet if we're not wearing armor, which we're a Psychic Monk. We have good dex. We don't need armor. And now we come to level 20. First up is Become Thought. With this feat, we gain resistance 10 to physical damage, but weakness 5 to mental damage, and weakness 10 to any effect that targets the spirit, such as Spirit Blast. You can also spend a single action that has the Concentrate trait to change your appearance with the effects of Illusory Disguise. However, this effect lasts until you change your appearance again. In addition, once per year when you die, you return to life the next day as long as a living sentient creature on your plane remembers you. You reconstruct yourself from their memories. You appear in the vicinity of the creature that remembers you most strongly, which could be a good thing and could be a very bad thing, depending on your character. But we're mainly taking this for the defense it gives us. And finally, our last feat for this build is going to be Sleeper Hold. For one action, if we have a foe grabbed or restrained, we can make a second athletics check to grapple the opponent. If we critically succeed on this grapple check, the foe becomes unconscious for 1 minute, but it remains standing and doesn't drop what it holds. If we succeed on this grapple check, the opponent becomes clumsy 1 until the end of its next turn. This grapple check has the same failure and critical failure effects as a normal grapple. For the second team report, first let's talk about Cleansing Light. The Dazzle condition is a lot better than most people think it is. Putting a flat check on every single attack the opponent makes before the end of their next turn is huge. If you can put this on a bunch of different enemies, then there's a good chance one of them's gonna miss, if not a whole bunch of them. Which of course not only helps you, but also helps the entire party for 1 round. Which might not seem like much, but 1 round can be the difference between winning and losing an encounter. And then in certain encounters, the restoration spell can be huge as well. And we don't want to have to waste one of our spell slots on it. So this will be a very good boon, even though we can only use it once per day. Also, with Wandering Thoughts, if we're low on health, we can cast a spell and get further away from enemies. Granted, the strategy for this build is to grapple the opponent and then brain blast the heck out of them, but sometimes we may want to just teleport away, and teleportation will definitely help us do that. Also, remember that mixed maneuver can be used on 2 different enemies. So we can trip one and then grapple another, or we can shove one and then trip the other, or we can shove one and then grapple the other, all without any multiple attack penalty. And remember, we're upping our charisma because our innate spells go off that, and for intimidation for Gorilla Pound. And intimidation is another way we can definitely debuff the opponent with this belt. Alright guys, you know the drill. Like, subscribe, ding that bell, stay caught up on all your stuff. And don't worry, I am eventually going to talk about the 1.1 OGL. But I'm going to do it with a couple other people I'm thinking about bringing onto the channel. So keep an eye out for that video. In the meantime, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, teamwork is vital.